Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to be breaking down Fables Volume 4 Part 2, March of the Wooden Soldiers. This is probably the best volume of Fables we've had so far. The overall plotline with the adversary is taken to the next level, where the adversary's forces are going to be coming to the mundane world, and there's going to be a battle in Fabletown. So it is going to be some epic stuff. Let's dive into it now. Fables Volume 4 Part 2, March of the Wooden Soldiers. Fables Volume 4 Part 2, March of the Wooden Soldiers. Written by Bill Willingham, art by Mark Buckingham. Fables Issue 19, March of the Wooden Soldiers, Chapter 1, Out of the Woods. In northern Saskatchewan in Canada, Red Riding Hood, whom we met in the pivotal one-shot story, Fables The Last Castle, which I covered in my last video, she has somehow escaped the Homelands and found her way to the mundane world, our world. She is getting a ride from some Fable truck drivers that were guarding the northern Fable gate between the Homelands and the mundane world. They are giving her a ride to the airport, where she can catch a plane to Fabletown. On the way, though, their truck gets ambushed by some goblins, and a fight breaks out. Over in Fabletown, Snow White is having a dream. Colin the pig, who died in Volume 2, appears to Snow White. Snow White, she learned recently that she was pregnant and that Bigby is the father. Well, Colin tells Snow White that she has more than one child in her belly, and that once her children are born, she will have to live up on the farm, as her kids will not be allowed to stay in Fabletown, most likely because they will look like Bigby. Colin also warns Snow that things are going to get real bad real soon, and not just for Snow, but for all of Fabletown, and maybe even for the Mundies as well, if Snow White is unable to stop it. Snow White eventually wakes up from her dream. Over at Bluebeard's apartment. Bluebeard, he got killed by Prince Charming in Volume 3. Well, over there now we see Boy Blue and King Cole doing an inventory on all of Bluebeard's various treasures and money. Boy Blue, reading from a list, says that Bluebeard had 5,000 Boxen gold coins, 2,200 of the Empire 50-ounce gold trading bars, 6 full chests of Emerald City silver, which is still being counted, and then there are separate chests for loose diamonds, rubies, and emeralds, an entire room of mounted finished jewelry. King Cole also adds that Bluebeard had tons of Mundi bank accounts too, all flush with cash. He could have bought and sold everyone in Fabletown many times over. In the Fabletown business office, we see Flycatcher. He is talking to the magic mirror. The magic mirror as made famous in Snow White's story. Flycatcher asks the mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the floor, can't you still not find my wife no more?" The mirror answers, "She's still lost in another land under a foreign sky, beyond my powers to see her. Sorry about that, Fly." We learn from this that Flycatcher has a wife that he had to leave behind in the Homelands, and he misses her desperately, and he is unsure where she is, or if she is even still alive. Bigby and King Cole have a conversation. Bigby is angry that King Cole let Prince Charming get away with killing Bluebeard. King Cole says that, hey, they had an official hearing. It was ruled a self-defense killing. Bigby says that he was spending years building a case against Bluebeard. He argues, "I was going to get Bluebeard legally. I was building a case against him that would have proved he continued to extort money out of the Fables he rescued, long after signing on to the general amnesty." King Cole, unimpressed, says, "So Prince Charming saved you additional years of effort. Accept it and move on." We see Snow White elsewhere has a doctor's appointment with Dr. Swinehart. Snow expresses her thoughts about this unwanted surprise pregnancy with Bigby. She says that it's going to ruin my life, my standing in the community, and what's left of my reputation. Dr. Swinehart, listening to her, tells her dancing around the subject a bit, that abortion is always an option. He frames it like such to her. He says, "If that's the way you feel about it, you have options. This is the 21st century after all." Snow White gets angry about this and tells him not to dare finish that thought. So I guess Snow White is going to keep these children. Prince Charming and his new butler Hobbs leave the woodland luxury apartments, and they begin walking around Fabletown. They are trying to collect 500 signatures, which will allow Prince Charming to run for mayor against King Cole. Bigby, he runs into them and learns about Prince Charming collecting signatures. Bigby, eventually, he runs into Snow White on the street, Snow White coming back from her doctor's appointment. Bigby tells her that the two of them should talk. She has been avoiding him. He says, "For better or worse, I'm the father of that cub growing in that belly, and as such, I have say in the plans you make, no matter how uncomfortable we are in each other's company." Snow White tears up a bit, still scared about this whole situation of this unexpected pregnancy with Bigby's children, but she does know that Bigby is right, and she tells him, yes, of course, you're right. You deserve a say, and you'll have it. We'll have a long talk, I promise, but please, just give me a little more time. I'm not ready yet. Another day or two. Bigby, he is willing not to push Snow on this right now, but he tells Snow that he does have an official matter they need to discuss. Bigby tells Snow White about Prince Charming collecting signatures around town, and they figure out that he is planning to run for mayor. They go and warn King Cole about this. King Cole, upon learning that his long reign as mayor is now going to be challenged, is not happy about this. He asks Bigby and Snow, "Why would someone want to take my place? Haven't I done a good job?" Snow White says that if Prince Charming wins, she is planning on quitting her role. She will not work with Prince Charming. Trusty John, he comes into the room and interrupts them. He tells the three of them to come outside this instant. There is something they are going to want to see. When they go outside, they see all the ruckus. People are gathering around as Red Riding Hood has arrived in Fabletown. This is a big deal because it has been over 100 years since the last Fable has left the Homelands and joined them. Red Riding Hood says, "Hello, my name is Red Riding Hood, and I've recently escaped from the Empire. I formally request sanctuary in Fabletown." Fables, Issue 20, March of the Wooden Soldiers, Chapter 2, Red, White, and Blue. Boy Blue shares an apartment with Pinocchio as they are friends. When Boy Blue wakes up this day, he jumps out of bed and accidentally steps on one of Pinocchio's toy soldiers, standing on the ground in their place. Boy Blue yells at Pinocchio and tells him, "I just cut my foot on one of your pissant toy soldiers." Pinocchio tells him, "First, I'm not the one who set up my wooden soldier collection all over the bedroom floor. It was Flycatcher. And those toys were the only possession I was able to bring out of the Homelands with me. They're carved by my own father, Geppetto, who never made it out at all. As such, they're the only things I have to still remember my dad, who, for all I know, may be dead, or even worse, enslaved all of these years. For exactly that reason, I treasure them too much to treat them as mere toys. Although Flycatcher keeps sneaking in here to play with them. He's the one that left them on the floor." Unrelated to this, Pinocchio passes on a message to Boy Blue. He tells him that there is a big commotion down at the business office, and Bigby told Pinocchio to tell Boy Blue that he is needed down there as soon as he wakes up. Down at the business office, Red Riding Hood is talking to Snow White, King Cole, and Bigby. Red Riding Hood explains her story of how she escaped the Homelands and got here. She says that after the fall of the keep at the world's end, as seen in the storyline The Last Castle, she was captured by the adversary's soldiers, and she was sent into slavery. She eventually escaped after years and fled to the Oz gateway that links to Canada in this world. There, she met two Fables that guarded the gate up there. They were giving her a ride when goblins ambushed them. She thinks that the goblins must have followed her through the gate. The two Fables and all of the goblins were killed, though. Red Riding Hood survived the skirmish, though, and she made it the rest of the way here. Snow White is skeptical and she asks, "All on your own?" Red Riding Hood says yes. King Cole, he is happy and accepts Red Riding Hood's story. He says, "That's a remarkable achievement, Miss Red Riding Hood. You're the first Fable to escape from the Homelands in more than a century. Do you have any idea what effect your arrival is going to have on the morale of this community?" King Cole wants to use this good news of Red Riding Hood coming as a way to prop up his election chances. If people are all happy about Red Riding Hood, they'll be happy about his leadership. Elsewhere in Fabletown, Prince Charming is in a candy store, and he is giving a speech to various Fables, trying to get signatures for his election run. Charming starts making various campaign promises. He says that now that the government is flush with Bluebeard's money, he wants to start giving out welfare and free healthcare to the Fables. He argues, if a Mundy loses his job, there's welfare. If a Mundy gets sick, all he has to do is show up at the nearest hospital where he can't be turned away, because medical help is mandatory. If a Mundy's not able to get into the school or sporting event or social club he wants to join, he can sue, and his government will force the offending institution to open its doors to him. Even if he spills a cup of coffee on himself, he can sue for $1 million. Mr. Mundy is cared for by his government. But here in Fabletown, it's a different story altogether. When some misfortune happens to one of us, it's too bad, but you better find a better way to fix it fast, or it's off to the farm with you. We're Fables, for heaven's sake. And yet not one of us is as well off as the most miserable, decrepit Mundy. Now I ask you, is that right? Is that the way things ought to be? The crowd is starting to get worked up. They're liking Prince Charming's message. Specifically, Beauty and the Beast find the message appealing, as they were upset with Snow White in Volume 1 when Beast was potentially going to have to be sent to the farm when he couldn't get his transformations under control and he was looking more beast-like. And Snow White, she refused to cover any cost of a glamour for Beast. Well, under Prince Charming's leadership, glamours like that would be covered. Over at the Fabletown business office, Boy Blue finally arrives, and there he sees Red Riding Hood. He is surprised to see her. The two of them had a romantic relationship in the Last Castle storyline, and they spent the night together. Red Riding Hood even offered to marry Boy Blue so that he could get a spot on the last boat out, headed for the Homelands. Boy Blue, he always thought that Red Riding Hood was dead, and Red Riding Hood thought the same of Boy Blue. She had no idea he made it on the last boat out in the end. Boy Blue tells her, "Oh dear God, I can hardly believe my eyes. Is it really you?" Red Riding Hood asks, "How can you be here, Blue? You stayed behind. I saw the boat leave without you." Boy Blue, crying now of happiness, says, "It was a long story, but I was able to join the boat after it sailed." Red Riding Hood, she does a complete 180 though. She says, "You left me to die! Get your hands off me!" Boy Blue says, "But I thought you were on the boat." Red Riding Hood tells Blue, "You abandoned me, Blue, after using me for the night, just the way their soldiers treated me. At least they had the courtesy not to pretend love had anything to do with it." Boy Blue is shocked and upset that Red Riding Hood is reacting this way. Snow White whispers to Bigby that she did not expect it to turn out this way. It is not going well. Bigby, though, he is suspicious of Red Riding Hood. He thinks that she might be a spy for the adversary. He murmurs to Snow White, "This is precisely the right move for her to make." Bigby, he thinks this because if Red Riding Hood is actually a spy, she would not want to be close to Boy Blue, as Boy Blue could ruin her cover. Back to Prince Charming and his various mayoral election promises. Prince Charming continues talking to the group and he says, "The first thing the new administration will do is fund free glamours for anyone who needs them. No more will Fables be shipped off to the farm just for looking a touch inhuman. And how about government-sponsored transformations for any farm Fable who might want to end centuries of unfair confinement up there? It worked for Bigby, so why not everyone else? They can always return to the safety of the farm during those times when they want to resume being a piggy or a duck or a billy goat. My fellow citizens, it's time to make a proactive decision for the future of Fabletown. If you want to help usher in a new golden age, simply sign this petition. Elsewhere in Fabletown, we see 3 men in Men in Black style suits, each of them also wearing sunglasses. They look like they're in the FBI or something. They are actually wooden soldiers of the adversary that have come to the mundane world. These particular wooden soldiers are named Lou, Hugh, and Drew. These wooden soldiers are a little unaccustomed to the mundane world. When a hot dog vendor on the street offers them a hot dog to eat, the wooden soldiers reply befuddled, "Why would you do that, meathead? Why would you offer food to us? We don't need food, we need guns and directions to Bullfinch Street. Come on, meat, quickly!" So while the wooden soldiers are calling people meat and forcing them to give them directions, we jump back over to the Woodland apartment building. King Cole shows Red Riding Hood to a room for her to stay in. Red Riding Hood requests that King Cole keep Boy Blue away from her. King Cole tells her, there's no need for you to see anyone you don't want to. Bigby and Snow White are talking elsewhere. Snow asks Bigby, what is his theory on Red Riding Hood that he was alluding to earlier? Bigby explains how he took a leave of absence from Fabletown during World War I and World War II and snuck off to fight in the wars? Well, during the wars, I did my share of fighting behind enemy lines, mostly on my own, but occasionally working with our commando groups. From time to time, we'd find it advantageous to place agents among the enemy, most often posing as defectors. One good way to ensure those defectors were taken as legitimate was to literally chase them into enemy hands, even to the extent of putting a bullet or 2 into them. It was a risk, but nothing was so convincing to the bad guys like some poor bastard wounded in the process of joining up with them. You heard her story. A carload of goblins tried to kill her during her getaway to keep her from reaching us. Pretty convincing, wouldn't you say? And back in the Battle of the Keep at the World's End, Boy Blue said that she showed up there in very similar circumstances, grievously wounded while trying to reach our side. The enemy commander then swore no one would be taken alive when the garrison fell. In previous battles, such threats were always carried out. So why did they let her, and only her, live? Did they really need more scrub women so desperately? Also, the Canada Gate has been blocked for nearly 200 years, and it was closed from the other side by the adversary's forces, not ours. Also, how did she even learn how to drive to come here? Snow White, listening to Bigby's case, is definitely suspicious of Red Riding Hood now. But Bigby will need proof. Bigby says he is going to investigate. He says he will be gone for a few days, but he tells Snow in the meantime to control King Cole a bit, as he's a little bit too delighted to offer Red Riding Hood immediate Fable citizenship, and he wants that held off until he can finish his investigation. Over to Prince Charming and Hobbs. Charming collected a lot of signatures today, but he thinks when he goes up to the farm, he is going to easily get tons more. King Cole, he is later on having dinner with Red Riding Hood. He treats her to a big meal. At some point during their dinner, King Cole tells Red Riding Hood that as part of her initiation into Fabletown and being granted citizenship, Bigby will have to interview her and clear her. Red Riding Hood, learning that Bigby is in fact the big bad wolf, starts crying. She says, "What kind of monsters are you people? First you subject me to the boy who abandoned me to be raped and enslaved, And now you'll have me be interrogated by the wolf who tried to kill me? This is a world of madness! If you're familiar with Red Riding Hood's story, of course she had an interaction with the big bad wolf who was pretending to be her grandmother and then tried to kill her. It makes sense that she would not want to be questioned by him. Her reluctance to be interviewed by Bigby could be genuine, or it could be the fact that she's a spy and she doesn't want Bigby to sniff out her true motivations. Fables, Issue 21. March of the Wooden Soldiers, Chapter 3. Stop me if you've heard this one, but a man walks into a bar. Over at the Branstock Tavern, Jack Horner is talking to another Fable named Thrushbeard. Thrushbeard was a rich king back in the Homelands who married a princess who initially disparaged him and his bushy beard, but by the end of the story, the princess learned humility and they fell in love and lived happily ever after. At this Branstock Tavern, Jack is trying to get this Thrushbeard to invest in one of his schemes. Jack says he still has one of those magic beans from his story. Thrushbeard isn't impressed. He says, "How rare could those beans even be? They were selling for the rate of 5 beans per cow." Jack tells him, "You're missing the point. We can plant my bean and it will grow. And it will grow all the way up to the Cloud Kingdoms, and then we can steal all the loot up there. The adversary would never have been able to get up there, so it's still all there for the looting." Jack says, now here's the thing, he doesn't have the money to mount an expedition. So here's the deal he's making. He says, "We'll be equal partners. I provide one of the magic beans, and you put up the bare bones monetary expenses. Let's say about $13,000 to start with." Thrushbeard quickly rejects this and he says, "13,000, which I will never see again once I hand the money over to you. Forget it, Jack. I'm wise to your ways and I won't spend a nickel on any scheme involving you or your fictional legumes." Elsewhere, we see Bigby travels across New York City to a bar that is not in Fabletown. He is there to visit a fable that has decided to live outside of Fabletown and live among the Mundies. That fable that Bigby is there to see is named Kay, also known as the All-Seeing. Kay was originally from the 1845 story The Snow Queen. In that story, the devil makes a mirror which does not reflect anything good or beautiful, only reflects evil and ugly and makes them look worse than they are. The devil and his disciples try to carry the mirror into heaven to try and make fools of the angels, but they drop the mirror and it breaks into 1,000 pieces that then get scattered around with the wind. The pieces of glass then got into people's hearts and eyes. Kay, he got some of the mirror lodged into his eyes, and because of that, he got distorted visions. The visions caused him to alienate his best friend Gerda and join the Snow Queen in her palace. Gerda eventually manages to free Kay. Her tears melt the splinter of the devil's mirrors in his eyes, and they escape the Snow Queen. Well, that was the original story, but in Fables, Kay was never freed from the splinter of the devil's mirror, and despite his attempts to free himself by gouging out his own eyes, he never succeeds. The eyes always grow back, and he continues to see all the evil that people have ever done. Bigby, he talks to this Kay. Kay has recently gouged his eyes out again. Bigby asks Kay, why does he do it? Kay answers, "When I can see, I can't help but see every evil deed that each person has committed in their life. No visions of the good, only the evil in minute detail. Can you imagine what it's like to know such things? Better not to see at all." Bigby asks, how long has it been? Kay answers, a few years. It will be at least another 3 or 4 years before they grow back. Bigby is disappointed. He wanted to use Kay's ability to test out Little Red Riding Hood and see if she was being genuine. Kay asks, haven't I already tested them all? Bigby responds, There's a new girl, she just arrived. I suspect she's a spy for the adversary. You could have taken one glance at her and known if she was true or not. With that being a dead end for now, Bigby has to move on with his investigation. We jump back over to Jack Horner. Jack, he left the Branstock Tavern that night, and he got approached by 3 wooden soldiers. The wooden soldiers say that they overheard his conversation earlier about the magic beans and his plan, and the investment of $13,000 he would need. They offer to buy a magic bean for that price from him. Jack Horner, not knowing these 3 people, assumes them to be Mundies. He tells them, "You stupid Mundies, there's no such thing as magic beans. Newsflash, boys, Santa and the Easter Bunny ain't real either. You gotta switch your bullshit detectors off the extremely gullible setting." The 3 wooden soldiers then start beating up Jack. They tell him as they are kicking him, "We intend to have the magic beans, one way or the other, and every other item of strategic value in Fabletown. Along the way, we'll teach you meatheads. Even Fable meatheads need to learn respect." Back in the Fabletown business office, King Cole is talking with Bigby. Bigby says he has a flight to catch. King Cole wants Bigby to clear Red Riding Hood so he can formally welcome her into the community. Bigby says that that's not gonna happen, she's dirty. She's a spy for the adversary, and I'm gonna prove it. King Cole does not believe it though. Back over to Prince Charming and Hobbs. Hobbs shows Prince Charming an election poster he made up. It's Prince Charming's picture, and the slogan says, "Prince Charming for mayor, a man for all fables." Prince Charming, he likes it. He tells Hobbs to begin putting them up all over Fabletown. Hobbs, he begins to do so. He switches to his human glamour, and he begins walking around the neighborhood, hanging up posters. We see in an alleyway, Jack Horner is still being beaten up by the wooden soldiers. Jack finally manages to push them off of him though. Jack manages to knock off one of their hairpieces. Jack, he climbs up a building's fire escape. The wooden soldiers pursue him. One of the wooden soldiers climbs up on the roof to pursue Jack, but Jack hits the wooden soldier with a 2x4, and the wooden soldier falls off the roof and into the street below. The wooden soldier lands right on its wooden brother, and the 2 of them break into a few pieces. Jack calls out to the last wooden soldier that is climbing up the fire escape after him, and Jack asks him, "Okay boys, I'm waiting, who's next? You're not coming up here, fella?" Last wooden soldier, seeing that Jack has the advantage of the higher ground, decides to back off. He replies, "No, I believe my brothers and I have decided to suspend our conversation for now. I'll see you again, Jack Horner, I can promise that." The 3 wooden soldiers then gather up all of their wooden pieces and head back off to their hideout. At the business office, Bigby is getting prepared to leave. He has a flight to catch that'll take him to Canada. He wants to check out the gate up there and see what actually went down. He is talking to Snow White first, though, about Red Riding Hood. And that is when Jack Horner interrupts the 2 of them. Jack is all bloody and beaten up from his confrontation with the wooden soldiers. Jack tells Bigby, "I want to report a mugging, Sheriff." Fables, Issue 23, March of the Wooden Soldiers, Chapter 4, our Second Amendment issue. Note that Issue 22 is unrelated to this story arc and is skipped in this volume and will be covered in Volume 5. The 3 wooden soldiers have found a gun store called Big Ned's Discount Guns. It is out there in the Mundies in Brooklyn. It is a huge gun store that touts itself as having 3 floors of guns. When the store opens, the 3 wooden soldiers walk in. They tell the store owner that they want to buy one of each kind of gun. Elsewhere, Bigby and Snow White listen to Jack Horner's story of being assaulted by wooden soldiers. Bigby dismisses the story though. He just assumes it is another one of Jack's schemes, which is totally understandable that Bigby would assume that. but Jack insists he is not lying this time. Snow asks Jack, "Jack, did you ever hear about the boy who cried wolf?" And Jack replies, "Sure, Snow, he lives up on the 7th floor, so what?" Snow White sighs and says, "Never mind." Bigby, he finally leaves the business office to go and catch his plane to Canada. Back to the gun store in Brooklyn. The wooden soldiers ask the store owner, "How many kinds of guns have you meatheads created?" The owner answers, "Oh, thousands, hundreds of thousands." The soldiers then ask, "Are there really that many kind of people you need to kill? And what about bombs? Where do we get those? Do we also buy them here, or are bombs sold in a different shop?" The store owner doesn't exactly know how to answer that question. The wooden soldiers, they are ready to leave. They want to pay and get out of here. But the store owner then tells them about the 3-day waiting period policy, and he is unwilling to budge from that. The wooden soldiers then decide to brutally kill the store owner. They stab him with knives and hang him on the wall. Then they head to their car with all their guns. They leave a note on the dead store owner that reads, "Dear meatheads, we realize this is a vulgar and uncouth land, but from now on, let's try to have better manners towards your superiors. Hugh, Drew, and Lou." In Fabletown, Boy Blue is hanging out on the street with his 2 best pals, Pinocchio and Flycatcher. Boy Blue is sad because Red Riding Hood rejected him before he even had a chance to explain himself. Red Riding Hood then walks up to Blue. She apologizes. She says, "I owe you an apology, Blue. I had no idea you'd survived the keep at the world's end. Suddenly seeing you alive was like seeing a ghost. It shocked me and I panicked. Can you forgive my foolishness?" Boy Blue does in fact forgive her. He says how much he adores her, and they go on and they talk. Flycatcher and Pinocchio are nearby and they are listening to this conversation. Pinocchio complains to Flycatcher that Boy Blue and Red Riding Hood are being too lovey-dovey with each other. It's making him sick. Flycatcher replies, "Shut up, Pinocchio. Don't ruin the moment for them." Red Riding Hood, though, she overheard Flycatcher call Pinocchio, Pinocchio, and she immediately reacts very suddenly. She says, "What? What did he call you?" Boy Blue, he introduces Red Riding Hood to his friends, Flycatcher and Pinocchio. A little surprised by Red Riding Hood's reaction, Pinocchio asks, "You look like you swallowed a goat. Do I know you, or do I have a booger showing or something, or what?" Red Riding Hood explains, No, nothing like that. We've never met before, but I've heard of you." Pinocchio, confused, asks, "How? I came from a small town in a tiny kingdom in one of the poorest and most insignificant of the old worlds." Red Riding Hood replies, "Nevertheless, you're a legend in the Homelands." Pinocchio asks, "Hey, if you know about me, did you hear anything about my dad? To my knowledge, he never got out of the Homelands." Red Riding Hood is still in awe of Pinocchio. She comments, "I can't believe I'm actually seeing you in person." Boy Blue, a little bit weirded out by this, says, "Look, if you two want to be alone..." Red Riding Hood, she snaps out of it though, and she tells Blue, I'm sorry, Blue. I have so much I need to say to you. Can we talk somewhere privately?" "Not here. Too many distractions. Let's go to the place I stayed last night." Boy Blue and Red Riding Hood head off, and Flycatcher and Pinocchio think that Red Riding Hood was definitely a little strange. Elsewhere in Fabletown, King Cole sees Prince Charming's mayoral election posters hanging all around. There's even one in the lobby of the luxury apartments building. He gets angry about this and he orders Grimble, the security guard, to take that poster down this instant. In Beauty and the Beast's apartment, Prince Charming is visiting them. He tells them that if he gets elected mayor, he wants to offer Beauty the job to replace Snow White as his deputy and Beast to replace Bigby as sheriff. It will be a decent paying job, better than the current work they do in Fabletown. Beast, he currently works in maintenance, and Beauty clerks at a bookstore. Over to an abandoned warehouse. This is where Red Riding Hood has been staying. She brings Boy Blue there. She says she is nervous about being interrogated by Bigby. She's scared of him. Boy Blue tells her that everyone that is welcomed into the Fabletown community has to be interviewed by Bigby. It's standard procedure. He says everyone has to divulge as much as possible about their past in order to gather intelligence about the Homelands. And since you've been a slave of the adversary centuries longer than any of us, it'll probably take some time getting every bit of information from you. Red Riding Hood says that. Maybe Boy Blue can help her on this, though. Things would go smoother if she knew more about what she was facing. She says, "Tell me about the farm, who's up there, and what magic items do you people possess, and where are they stored? It looked like many of them were in the business office, and how many witches and warlocks and sorcerers do we have here?" Yo guys, Red Riding Hood's being super sus right now. Boy Blue tells her, "Ride, you don't need to know any of that to join Fabletown. Actually, wanting to know that kind of stuff will make Bigby even more suspicious." Red Riding Hood, she changes the subject and she says, "Oh pooh, that flea-bitten old monster. I'm tired of talking about him. Let's talk about you and me and why you haven't even kissed me yet." The two of them then kiss and they make love and then they go to sleep. But Boy Blue, in the middle of the night, he can't get over his suspicions about Red Riding Hood. She asks him to come back to bed. It's still very early. He tells her, though, "I can't. I've already been awake too long, thinking, trying to convince myself I'm mistaken about you. Who are you? I know you aren't Red Riding Hood. Care to tell me what you did with her?" Red Riding Hood tries to explain away her behavior, but Boy Blue ain't buying it. He says, "Don't even try that with me, lady. Just tell me who you are before I turn you in. And what's with this warehouse?" Red Riding Hood, realizing that her lying to Boy Blue will no longer hold up, she uses some magic, and she zaps Boy Blue unconscious. And then the three wooden soldiers walk into the room and ask her, "Shall we kill him, mistress?" And this fake Red Riding Hood, it is not the real one. She says, "Not yet. I want him finely chopped and cooked in my stew, but first, I need to question him thoroughly, and in a not-so-pleasant fashion as I'd originally planned." Fables, Issue 24, March of the Wooden Soldiers, Chapter 5, The Letter. Up at the farm, the many Fables are still sleeping in the early morning. We see the new three little pigs, Johnny, Lonnie, and Donnie. Remember, they used to be giants, but were transformed into the three little pigs in Volume 2. We see some small-town Fable police along with some mice. We see the cow that jumped over the moon along with the dish and the spoon. We also see Waylon Smith sleeping in a barn near a tractor. Rose Red also leaves that barn. It appears like the two of them spent the night together and are now in a relationship. As Rose Red enters her office, Clara is there. Clara, the dragon turned raven. There's also Stinky, the badger, and Mustard Pot Pete. Mustard Pot Pete tells Rose Red that there were a lot of complaints last night because Baba Yaga's big chicken leg magic hut thing started running all out of control, running all over the place, stepping on people's roofs, turning over garbage cans, scattering Mundy herds and flocks. Rose Red asks, "But it can't do that. It's under our control. Some of the more expensive spells we buy are laid over that wretched old witch's hut." We see Baba Yaga's hut is on those chicken legs and is running around, and various fables are trying to stop it and get it under control. Baba Yaga, in the Slavic and Russian folklore, is the mother of all witches. She is associated with the spirits of the forest and dragons and death itself. She is one of the most fearsome witches. As far as most of the fables know, Baba Yaga was still in the Homelands, but somehow her hut made it out here to the mundane world and was being kept on the farm. And for whatever reason, it started going crazy last night. Back in Fabletown, Flycatcher and Pinocchio tell Snow White that Boy Blue has been missing for 5 days. He was last seen with Red Riding Hood. They suspect it's possible that he ran away with her, but they do think it is odd that he did not bring his horn with him, as he rarely goes anywhere without it. Flycatcher says Bigby should go looking for him, but Snow White tells them that Bigby is away on business, and we all need to find Boy Blue on our own. We see where Boy Blue is now. He is being tortured by the wooden soldiers and Red Riding Hood. Boy Blue has managed to withstand the torture for several days, but eventually he did give up some information. This fake Red Riding Hood that was manipulating Blue is actually the witch known as Baba Yaga. She is hiding her true appearance, and her presence in the mundane world is why her hut started going all crazy on the farm recently. Baba Yaga is one of the adversary's top agents. Baba Yaga talks to Boy Blue about the real Red Riding Hood, she says. I can see now why the real Red Riding Hood was so quick to fall deeply in love with you. She still talks about you from time to time, and not just under questioning. She doesn't know you survived, of course. That came as quite a shock to me as well. But what can we do? Sometimes our intelligence services can't be all one expects. We'd hoped I could maintain this secret identity among you Fabletown refugees for years to come. But in quick succession, I ran into two Fables, you and the Wolf, who knew the original Red Riding Hood well enough to expose me. Bad luck, really. The wooden soldiers ask Baba Yaga, since you've emptied this twitching carcass of useful information, shall we finish him for you? Chop him up for your stew pot? Baba Yaga replies, no, I prefer the more tender flesh of the Monday babies you've been providing. I've thought of one further use for our most impressive Boy Blue that we can use him for. In the Woodland luxury apartments, Snow White is sleeping in bed and she gets a phone call from Bigby. Bigby gives Snow White some important, dangerous news. Bigby, he traveled to Canada to the northern gate to the Homelands up there. He tells Snow White that the entire Fable garrison they left up there to defend the place are all dead, and the gate has been opened from the adversary's side. There has been a lot of foot traffic up there, at least 3 different trucks backed up to the cave entrance to load whatever it is they've brought in. Bigby tells Snow, you gotta prepare for the worst, an invasion. Crash Fabletown now, shut it down. Inside my office in the safe under my desk, you'll find the emergency procedures file. Snow White asks if Bigby is coming back. She says that they need him. Bigby tells her, as soon as he destroys the gate up here on their side, he'll be on his way. Until then, it's up to her to hold on. Alright everyone, a war is coming to Fabletown, and Bigby, he is up in Canada and won't be back for a while. The wooden soldiers, they begin packing their guns and they are getting ready to move. Snow White, she calls an emergency meeting in Fabletown. She tells everyone in attendance in her business office. We're in crash mode, ladies and gentlemen. We've practiced this several times in the past. Beast, he jumps in and says, yeah, not since we were still an English colony and our close neighbors didn't number in the millions. And Beauty adds, how could we possibly hide this from the Mondays? I don't remember what we're even supposed to do in an invasion, do you? Does anybody? King Cole, he's just worried about his job as mayor and the election coming up. He says, oh dear, this is terrible. First thing we need to do is suspend all elections. Oh, King Cole, you're a sly one, you. Snow White, she tells them all, fine, so we've gotten complacent when the adversary didn't invade in the first few years. We foolishly began to believe he never would. But we're not being attacked this very second. We got time to prepare. We're not helpless and we aren't going to lose our heads. Now listen up for your assignments. We've got to go through this quickly so I can get up to the 13th floor for a meeting with the Witches' Council. First, the following people will man the phones, coordinating preparations with the farm. All of a sudden, before they can continue on with this discussion, a gunshot rings out. The wooden soldiers shot Trusty John in the lobby of the Woodland Luxury Apartments building. Trusty John will live though. Snow White and the others go to see what the commotion is. The wooden soldiers, they give them Boy Blue's body back. Boy Blue is luckily still alive, but he is severely injured. The wooden soldiers say that they have an important message to give. They then pull out a scroll, and it is a handwritten message from the adversary. The wooden soldier begins reading the message. He says, To our subjects in Fabletown and throughout the mundane world, greetings from your Emperor. Like the prodigal's father, our love for you endures without ceasing. With measureless charity, we long for the day when you're gathered back into our bosom. But do not fret that we intend to return you to us through force. Our eyes are turned elsewhere for now, to other distant Fable lands, still ignorant of the Empire's manifest blessings. Our fervent wish is to leave you peaceful in your self-imposed exile, until such time as you awaken to your own folly and rejoin us willingly. In furtherance thereof, I send you our imperial envoy, a great lady of our court, commonly known as Red Riding Hood. Under our protection, she speaks with our voice. She will work tirelessly to achieve reconciliation between us. But in the meantime, we can't let you remain a thorn in our side, a distraction from other matters of concern. Therefore, in one day, a troop of our Imperial agents will arrive to take possession of all magic property illegally removed from our lands. Take note that such items are known to us in detail. If you attempt to hide these things, even in your hearts, there will we rake for them in the fullness of our power and wrath. The letter ends. Wooden Soldier also adds, "Who knew he was among you here? Tomorrow, when we return to collect our Emperor's property, we will also be taking the noble Pinocchio with us, because you're the first carved, our eldest brother, beloved to us, even though horribly tainted by your unfortunate transformation to meat. Fear not, our Emperor's sorcerers can surely undo the curse, making you whole and good and wooden again. You have the day, brother, to gather your belongings and bid goodbye to this lot." The wooden soldiers then leave. Snow White orders Flycatcher and Prince Charming to drive Boy Blue to the hospital to Dr. Swinehart, and then begin preparations for battle. Later that day, Pinocchio in his room begins packing. He feels he must go with the wooden soldiers. Maybe he can prevent a war. Flycatcher tells Pinocchio not to worry. There are just 3 wooden soldiers. They can take them. Pinocchio to this argues, 3 that we know of, and nothing about them will be easy. Remember, I used to be one. They're tough, strong, and need no food, nor sleep, and feel no pain. We're in big trouble. Besides, I have to go anyway. Don't you realize what their existence means? The adversary's living wooden soldiers prove my dad's alive and he's been making them. Papa Geppetto is the adversary's slave. Fables, issue 25. March of the Wooden Soldiers, chapter 6. Our right to assemble. Rose Red is driving down from the farm with animal Fables willing to fight and defend Fabletown, as well as with many weapons. In Fabletown, the Fables begin erecting a barrier of barrels to block off Bullfinch Street from the Mundies. Some Mundy cops come by and ask Prince Charming about it. Prince Charming explains they have a permit, it's right here, to close off Bullfinch Street for a block party. The Mundy cops, they inspect the permit and they buy the story, but they say that they will need to clear the barrier the day after tomorrow. The Fables, they are doing this because they figure when the war with the wooden soldiers comes to Fabletown, they don't want their cover blown afterwards with the Mundies. It may be hard to hide a huge war right in New York City, but they are going to try. The wooden soldiers, meanwhile, are making their own preparations. Initially, there was just 3 of them, Lou, Hugh, and Drew, but a large shipment of containers have came in from the gate in Canada, the one that Bigby since closed. When Bigby was up at that gate, he saw all sorts of truck tracks driving by. Well, those trucks are the ones that delivered these crates. Inside these containers are a whole bunch of wooden soldier parts carved from the magic wood in the homelands that allows the soldiers to come to life. Along with these parts, there is also matching suits, and the 3 wooden soldiers begin assembling more wooden soldiers for the fighting, more allies for the battle, and soon enough, they have a whole army of them. Boy Blue at the hospital got operated on by Dr. Swinehart. Boy Blue is still in rough shape. His hands are especially messed up, but Boy Blue insists on going back to Fabletown for the coming battle. Snow White, she goes up to the 13th floor of the Woodland Luxury Apartments building. The 13th floor is where all the witches and wizards and sorcerers live. Snow White holds a meeting with them. The various members of this witches' council are Prospero, Morgan Le Fay, Ozma, Mr. Grandors. He was the bear-turned-human that we met in Volume 3. There's Maddie, who is currently taking on the form of a cat. There's the Good Witch. She's the one from Thumbelina's story. There's Carrot Cadabra. There's Miss Someone. And most importantly, there is the current leader of the 13th floor witches, Frau Totenkinder, aka the Black Forest Witch, the witch from stories such as Rapunzel, Sleeping Beauty, as well as Hansel and Gretel. Snow White tells the witches that their services are needed for the coming battle. She explains, even if we win the battle, we'll still lose everything if the Mundies discover any part of what's about to occur. Your one and only job is to keep the Mundies from noticing or remembering anything that happens here over the next couple of days. Snow White is told what she is asking is going to be expensive. Can Fabletown really afford so many costly enchantments? Snow White replies, "This is an officially declared Fabletown emergency, and like every other able-bodied Fable, you've been drafted to do your part. Go read your copies of the Fabletown Compact. For the duration of this crisis, you're all working for free." Frau Totenkinder, she is a little bit apprehensive about this, but she accepts their assignment. She tells Snow, "Fine, we're eager to help." The witches and Snow then discuss the specifics. Elsewhere, Rose Red arrives from the farm with the weapons and various farm fables. Later on in the day, Snow White distributes walkie-talkie radios to everybody. And then Boy Blue, he arrives from the hospital with Dr. Swinehart, reporting for duty. We see Beast. He needs to transform into his most beastly form for the battle. In order to do so, though, he needs to get his wife Beauty angry with him, so him and Prince Charming came up with a little scheme. Prince Charming knocks on Beauty's door, and Prince Charming tells Beauty that Beast offered her lovemaking services for a price. He tells her, "Oh, didn't Beast tell you yet? We reached a modest monetary deal for about 15 minutes of your considerable charms. You two need the extra income after all. And I've always liked a good lusty tumble before a fight." Beauty grows immensely angry upon hearing this, and she yells, "He what? Get out! Get out, you filthy, filthy!" And Beast, with Beauty now really angry with him, is able to quickly transform into full beast mode. And now, him and Prince Charming run off, and Beast comments, "Oh yes, I'm ready for war now." Everyone assembles in the main street of Fabletown. Snow White, she gives everyone a rousing speech, saying that they are not fighting for country, but they are all fighting for each other. Beast, he is there, as are the 3 bears up from the farm, as are Rose Red and Waylon Smith by her side. Boy Blue is there too. His hands are still so messed up from the torture that he was subjected to, but he is so committed to fighting, he has his sword bandaged to his mangled hands. Over at the warehouse, where the wooden soldiers are staying, along with Baba Yaga, they all begin their march towards Fabletown. At Pinocchio's apartment, Jack Horner is checking his guns. He is there to guard Pinocchio. Pinocchio wants to go back with the wooden soldiers once they run away from the battle. Jack, though, has been ordered by Snow White to guard Pinocchio during the battle. As They do not want Pinocchio being captured or running back to the homelands with the wooden soldiers and telling them absolutely everything he knows about Fabletown. Jack tells Pinocchio that his orders are, if it looks like he is about to fall into the enemy's hands or go with them voluntarily, he has orders to gun Pinocchio down. Pinocchio gulps when he hears this and then falls silent. In the Woodland Luxury Apartments building, Hobbs, Prince Charming's hobgoblin butler, is there along with Grimble. Grimble, from this point in the story, we've only seen him in his human form. Well, right now we see him in his troll form. And him and Hobbs are talking. They make a wager. They say, whichever one of them collects the most enemy heads in the coming battle wins, and the loser buys the other dinner. They accept their gamble, and they head off to the fight. The wooden army begins walking down the street. Mondays are looking out their windows at the sight, and they see the wooden soldiers marching in formation. Above the Fabletown streets, the farmland birds on Sky Patrol are flying around, and they see all the wooden soldiers coming. The birds fly back to the front lines in Fabletown, and they report in on the size of the coming army. The birds say to sound the alarms. There are hundreds, maybe even thousands, coming their way. Fables, Issue 26, March of the Wooden Soldiers, Chapter 7, The Battle of Fabletown. The battle begins. The wooden soldiers and the Fables are fighting over the barricades. The Fables start firing their guns from behind the barriers, also shooting from their apartment buildings at the wooden soldiers, but the bullets don't seem to have any effect against the wooden soldiers' bodies. Snow White is watching the battle from a balcony up above with binoculars. She is coordinating all of their forces and giving orders. She is there along with Flycatcher. The barrier gets breached, and the wooden soldiers overrun Bullfinch Street. Prince Charming orders the Fables to fall back. Snow White waits until every last wooden soldier has stepped onto their turf. She did this as to keep the Mondays from noticing any more of the battle as they might already have. Then Snow White gives the orders to the Grenadiers. Fables start lobbing grenades at the wooden soldiers. Fables from the front lines tossing grenades. Fables from their windows. Even the bird Fables dropping grenades from the sky. They manage to do some significant damage to the wooden soldiers, but quickly all of their grenades are used up. Snow White then orders their heavy hitters to come in. The big fighters. Out comes a rhino and the three bears, as well as Grimble the troll and Hobbs the hobgoblin and Beast. Waylon Smith with his hammer and Boy Blue with his powerful Vorpal blade start swinging at the wooden soldiers. Grimble and Hobbs start tearing other wooden soldiers apart. While the heavy hitters are doing some fighting, Snow White orders the other Fables to retreat further into the woodland courtyard. She wants them to look scared while they are retreating as a sort of trap. The wooden soldiers follow them, but when they get close enough to the sandbags around the front gates, the sandbags are pulled away by the Fables to reveal large cannons, and the Fables start firing on the wooden soldiers and take many of them out. Waylon Smith, he's fighting. He ducks the splintered wooden remains flying overhead. As the dust settles from the cannon fire, Waylon confidently gloats, "So, any of you toy soldiers still have some fight in you?" The wooden soldiers respond by shooting Wayland several times in the back with a shotgun. Wayland is dead. Boy Blue starts calling for a medic, but then he gets shot as well with a bullet piercing his neck. Inside the Woodland Luxury Apartments building, the main office has been turned into a makeshift hospital where Dr. Swinehart is caring for any wounded in battle. Snow White, watching the battle from the balcony up above, sees that some of the wooden soldiers are salvaging body parts from their fallen comrades, and they are assembling new wooden soldiers to fight on. Snow White orders their heavy hitters to get out of there, and then she tells Flycatcher to radio into Rose Red, and for Rose Red to send Clara the dragon-turned-raven in. Clara, the raven, flies into the sky. And while Clara is flying, we see Boo Bear get shot by an armed wooden soldier. He dies as well. Clara, the raven whom was previously a dragon, is up high in the sky. Clara spews fire from her mouth, which is a holdout power from when she was a dragon. The wooden soldiers catch on fire. Pinocchio, watching the battle on the sidelines with Jack Horner, knows that this was a bad move. Pinocchio explains to Jack, "Snow White doesn't understand. Those creatures are made like me, made out of hardwood. Yes, they'll burn eventually, but not quickly. And until then, they'll still walk and kill and set fire to whatever they touch. Snow White just created 200 mobile human torches." The wooden soldiers, all on fire now, speak of how they are doomed. However, they say, while they will all eventually burn to death, it will take a while. So for now, they will take down as many foes as they can before they go. Pinocchio tells Jack to run and warn Snow what she is doing. Pinocchio, he then heroically runs out in the middle of the battlefield. He hopes that the wooden soldiers will recognize him and stop their battle. Pinocchio runs out in the middle of the battlefield. He yells at the wooden soldiers and says, stop fighting, it's me, I command it. I command you to stop fighting." The wooden soldiers do not recognize Pinocchio through all the smoke and fire, so they slice his head off with an axe. Then afterwards we can hear the two wooden soldiers speaking. One asks, "Who was that, brother? He seemed to think we'd recognize him." The other replies, "Who knows? I can barely see at all through these flames. Who can fathom the minds of meat? They're all nuts." With Pinocchio decapitated, the battle goes on. Snow White is watching this all from the balcony. She picks up a phone and dials into the 13th floor witches. She orders the witches to start making it rain. They need to put out these flames. Frau Totenkinder argues that Snow White's previous instructions were for them to concentrate on making the fight unnoticeable by the Mundies. Snow White tells Totenkinder, "Yeah, and rain will help keep the Mundies indoors and out of our business, so don't argue with me. Obey me, woman, or you'll discover just how much shit I can unleash on Fabletown citizens who piss me off." Frau Totenkinder, she thinks Snow White is being rude, but she will follow the orders. Totenkinder, after the phone call, gives orders to the other witches. She tells them, "Give Snow all the rain she wants. You can handle that much without me." And while the rest of the witches begin performing the rain spell, Frau Totenkinder heads off. When she is asked by the other witches where she is going, Totenkinder answers, she is going to teach an impudent woman a well-deserved lesson. She is not referring to Snow White, though. She is referring to someone else. The rest of the Fables on the street down below start fighting the fire with fire hoses. We see Mama Bear and Papa Bear spraying water. Mama Bear says to the wooden soldiers, "This is for my Boo Bear, you monsters!" The battle is not going well. The on-fire wooden soldiers may destroy all of Fabletown, but then Bigby finally arrives. He blows a massive gust of wind like a small hurricane, and he blows out the flames, and he sends the wooden soldiers into a pile of broken parts. Bigby says to the crowd of Fables, "Sorry I'm late, folks. Did I get any of you with my huff and puff? It's not the easiest thing to aim. Maybe we better tend to the remaining fires before anything else." Fables, issue 27, March of the Wooden Soldiers, chapter 8, In Like a Lion Out on the Lamb. While the battle with the wooden soldiers was happening on the street below, where was Baba Yaga, aka Fake Red Riding Hood? Well, we see during the battle, Baba Yaga was in a bed flying above the streets when all of a sudden, a voice started talking to her in her head. The voice told her to come up to the roof of the Woodland Luxury Apartments building. So Baba Yaga flew up there, and on the roof she saw Frau Totenkinder there. Baba Yaga is not intimidated by Totenkinder, and when Baba Yaga sees it as her, she comments, "I know you. You're that backwards conjure hag with the gingerbread fetish." Fro Totenkinder replies to this. And I sensed who you were the moment you woke up that ridiculous chicken hut of yours, Baba Yaga. The two of them are preparing to do a witch's duel. Baba Yaga is confident, though. She was always the most popular witch in all of the fables. Her name is known by many of the Mundies, where the Mundies barely know the name of Fro Totenkinder. Baba Yaga questions Fro. You'd actually duel with me? You were never in my league. Totenkinder responds, perhaps not in the old days, in the old lands, but you're a stranger here, in this small spot of earth, where I've had centuries to weave and knit every possible spell of advantage. You've stumbled into my place of power, foolish woman. Baba Yaga to this replies, fine, then let's be at it. This endless conversation bores me. And the two of them begin dueling. We jump back down to the streets below, with Bigby finally having arrived and using his north wind blowing power to put out some of the fires. All of the Fables are very happy to see him. Bigby, he starts giving orders. He says, we need 3 teams. Team 1 fights the fires. Team 2 gathers the wounded and gets them inside. And Team 3 inspects the wooden soldiers carefully and removes their heads, no matter how dead they seem. Hobbs and Grimble say, oh, they'll do that, the collecting the heads thing. Snow White, she then runs out into the street, so happy to see Bigby. Rain is falling down on her big pregnant body. Snow White was a little bit cold to Bigby earlier, not sure she wanted to be with him or have his children, but something about the battle and the life or death circumstances they were in leads to her finally accepting that she wants to be with Bigby, and she is glad he is here to protect them all. Snow White yells out to Bigby, I knew it! I knew you'd come in time to save us. You always do. She hugs Bigby and she tells him, you always save me. Bigby, he is happy to see Snow White as well. He tells her to go back inside. He says, think of the cub. Get yourself indoors this instant. Snow White does head back indoors. Snow White's sister, Rose Red, seeing this, is surprised to see Snow White is with Bigby now, but she also seems happy for her. Hours later, while cleaning up the streets, King Cole and Flycatcher are startled as lightning strikes and hits the roof of the Woodland Luxury Apartments. They head into the elevator to check it out. Once they reach King Cole's penthouse, King Cole tells Flycatcher to wait while he investigates. King Cole heads over to the window and peers out to see what it is. And when King Cole looks out the window, he sees some of the fighting going on between Baba Yaga and Fro Totenkinder, and it scares him. Fearfully, he retreats back into the elevator, and he tells Flycatcher that no one is to go to the roof for the rest of the night. On the roof, we see the aftermath of the battle between Fro Totenkinder and Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga is lying on the roof near death. She is electrocuted and burned and badly injured. Baba Yaga can't believe that Fro Totenkinder beat her so easily. She asks, how? Totenkinder, just knitting, sitting in a rocking chair, replies, excuse me? I can't quite make out what you're saying. Baba Yaga says again, How did you do this? Totenkinder answers, I explained it all before. In this place, I'm more powerful than you. In hindsight, I might have been so in any place. It's good to get that finally sorted out between us, don't you think? Baba Yaga says, but I was always the most powerful one. Totenkinder replies, I know, you were in so many stories, so feared and so well known. Personally, I never thought much of that popularity equals power nonsense. It's never been tested under controlled conditions. I've tried to stay out of the stories myself. I prefer to be anonymous and have my own counsel. Fro then talks about the Hansel and Gretel and the gingerbread house story that she is most famous for, which she resents. Totenkinder says, and in that one story they simply won't forget. At least, they never even knew my name. Could have been any old witch in the woods. I was always stronger than you thought. Killed 12 times, but it never took. even burned to ashes in my own oven. I came back after a good while. How's that for a frail old biddy, huh? Now, you hush and let me finish my knitting. Time to stop struggling and let the deep darkness take you. Your stories are all done, Baba Yaga. 2 days later, long after the battle was over, on the local New York City news, the witch's spells seem to have successfully kept the Battle of Fabletown secret. The news reports on incidents relating to the Fabletown battle, but they misreport them as nothing stories. On the news, they say, a block party on the Upper West Side got out of hand, causing a minor building fire which was quickly extinguished. A reporter named Kevin, listening to this story, he is a little bit flabbergasted by it. He heard rumors of men in black suits and a flying bed with a beautiful woman on it. He thinks there is more to this story, but his boss tells him that he's going full X-Files. They report facts here, not conjecture. It's a nothing filler story. He says don't waste your time on it. The day after that, a funeral is held for all of the fallen in battle. All of the fables gather around the witching well. King Cole says a few words, and various fables are committed to the well. Some of the deaths in the Battle of Fabletown are Boo Bear, some of the Mouse Police, and Wayland Smith as well. Bigby, he then brings in Baba Yaga's body and dumps her down the well, too. Papa Bear objects. He asks, "You're going to put that witch's corrupt, festering carcass down there with my own son?" Bigby replies, "We have to. I'm sorry, but she's too dangerous. This is the only way to ensure she never comes back to trouble us again." As Baba Yaga's body is thrown down the well, King Cole says, "This is our dire enemy, a most wretched woman whom we will not name. If there's anything down there that can cause her eternal pain and torture, be our guest." After the funeral ceremony, Bigby, he visits the dungeons in the Woodland Luxury Apartments building. He talks to Boy Blue. Boy Blue has been keeping watch of all the wooden soldier heads that have been lined up on shelves. Bigby asks Blue if they're talking yet, and Boy Blue answers, "They're talking all the time, but not about anything important. Just lots of curses at me and jabbering at each other all at once." Bigby, he then proceeds deeper into the dungeons, somewhere secretive, and he meets Fro Totenkinder and a restrained Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga is very injured, but she is not actually dead, and she was not actually thrown down the witching well. That was just a misdirection. Bigby, he wants everyone in Fabletown to think that she was killed and sent down the well, but really, he wants Baba Yaga alive and restrained. Baba Yaga was the adversary's top enforcer, and they can potentially get some good information out of her. Bigby and Fro Totenkinder are the only ones who know of this secret for now. Totenkinder says that she'll drain Baba Yaga's magic every day for as long as they need her. Bigby tells her it could be years. Totenkinder says that she is patient. Bigby, he then talks to Baba Yaga. He tells her, "Listen up, Baba Yaga. You're all alone now. No one even knows you're still alive, except for me and Fro Totenkinder. No food, no comfort, no entertainment, and no company except us. That will never change. So let me know when you're ready to talk about the adversary or something else. I know you think you'll hold out, but no one does for long. Eventually, you'll tell me everything. Until then, enjoy your stay." The next day, life starts returning to normal for all the Fables. In what I thought was very humorous, Prince Charming and King Cole, trying to capitalize on the battle, each had election posters of themselves made up, touting each of them as the hero of the Battle of Fabletown. When King Cole saw that Prince Charming also had this poster made up, he just moaned and said he was going to bed. Dr. Swinehart, Flycatcher, and Boy Blue are looking at Pinocchio's body. Pinocchio has since reverted back to his wooden form ever since he got his head chopped off. Dr. Swinehart is not a specialist in dealing with wooden bodies. He is unsure of how he can heal Pinocchio, but he remains hopeful that Pinocchio can be restored somehow. On the farm, Mama Bear and Papa Bear mourn the loss of their son, Boo Bear. Mama Bear tells Papa, though, she is pregnant. Rose Red, she mourns the loss of Waylon Smith. Their relationship just kind of started, and now it is over. In Fabletown, Snow White and Bigby are on a park bench. Snow White tells Bigby she thinks her water just broke. And that is the end of Fables Volume 4, March of the Wooden Soldiers. Alright, so that was Fables March of the Wooden Soldiers, and I think this was a perfect volume. I even love the subplot of Prince Charming and King Cole and their mayoral election. Some really funny stuff going on there. But we have Red Riding Hood, who is secretly Baba Yaga, coming from the Homelands to the mundane world, and we see her scheming and lying, so I thought that was really great stuff. The Wooden Soldiers are a great enemy. They are an army of really tough wooden soldiers. I love how they're calling everyone meat. They don't have to sleep. They don't have to eat. They can just keep going. So they are a really good foe. Their battle in the Battle of Fabletown was really awesome stuff. I love Snow White controlling people, telling them what to do, sending the Grenadiers out, telling people to retreat, telling Clara the Dragon to blow some fire on everyone. So that was some really cool stuff. I love some of the hints with Pinocchio in here and how he ties into the wooden soldiers. And we're going to see some payoff with Pinocchio in future volumes, so that's really cool stuff. I like how the adversary has not been revealed yet. It is pretty cool just keeping it a mystery for now. When it finally does get revealed, I'm going to love to talk about it with you all and my thoughts on the adversary. But for now, I think the mystery is pretty awesome. The concept of the 13th floor witches, which was revealed to us this volume, I thought was really cool. This whole floor of witches that do the bidding of Fabletown, great stuff. The battle between Baba Yaga and Frototinkinder was awesome, even though we didn't even really get to see them fighting that much. We just saw the hype beforehand. We saw King Cole's fearful reaction to the glimpse of the fight he did see, and then we saw the aftermath with Frototinkinder gloating. So yeah, really cool stuff there. And I love that Baba Yaga is now secretly being held in the dungeons of Fabletown, where Bigby and Totenkinder will interrogate her for the months and years to come. And we had the aftermath of the battle with various fables dying. So when fables die, when the main characters die, it really ups the stakes. So that was really cool stuff. So all in all, an amazing volume. Really ups the stakes, really progresses the story. I'm going to give this one a 10 out of 10. Fantastic stuff. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll be back in the future with Volume 5.